My friends, my dears, happy birthday, Aquarius, and all signs affected per the season. It is actually the birthday of a dear Aquarius in my life, so may you send them some love, and may I send that love to you as well. So, with that being said, if you have dabbled in 13 sign astrology or in any sort of indigenous or ancient astrology that expands beyond the Western 12, or if you've dabbled in any astrology outside of the Western 12, these energies are limited in 12 and expand mathematically beyond that, which is why 13 sign astrology is important. And so the innervations essentially are all of Ficus. Aquarius would break up into, let's pull it up. Aquarius would break into, we've got Uranus, we've got Saturn, we've got air, sure. Positive, charged, but also southern fire and a western earth. So interesting chemical compositions, not just air, not just this or that, but very much the space in between, and not just that, but its impact and its, I feel like impact is the best word, not necessarily product even, like a tangible thing, but it feeds the earth in some way. The way thoughts feed the body, the way, air feeds the lungs, the way space feeds the mind, the way almost what's unseen has a greater value than what is seen. What's felt having a greater value than just what is seen. Which is important given all that's going on with Venus, and as Venus is moving, and also, what is it, a Aphelion, so its farthest point from the sun, as it moves closely with Mercury and Mars and all of these picking aparts of understandings lately, it's also at its farthest point from light, and maybe that much farther from our perception or view at times. I mean, it's, Arctic freeze these days. So it's interesting even that with this fire, it's like, even though Aquarius is an air sign, this fire and this earth is very much about the nourishment and sustainability as an air in a long wind, as an air as a long travel, which is very much also going to relate directly to its innervations. Venus and Pluto are doing some interesting things too. Pluto's obviously moving into Aquarius, so long winds again, long impacts, long reflections and sort of accountability of, less so of, again, the here or there, like then and now, but more so the collection of experiences as we move forward, but also, again, energy of Aquarius. Pluto and solar conjunction. The moon will go into, or the moon will be conjunct with Saturn, will also be conjunct with Jupiter and Venus later, later following in the month too for Aquarius season. Lots of what is it? Occultations. It's like the moon covering certain stars in the constellations, and quite honestly, from what I gather, very powerful star constellations, very potent star constellations. So I think how we gaze upon these things is also how we conjure heat, and that is very much the gaining of information and wisdom and knowledge that very much holds Aquarius upright when taught between spaces. So all of this will also probably very much relate to Pluto's progressions as it moves forward, which is interesting. There's going to be a lot of information because it's not just like information here, whereas Aquarius here, but it's also Aquarius in so many long form calculations. What's up, friend? So, according to Al Sears Codex, which you can get at mytotemodification.com, not just positive, not just Uranus, not just Saturn or air, but southern fire or western earth, the mirror or the storm in Mayan or Aztec or Toltec astrologies, or even the newer ideations within like dream spell, still are very much an homage to those original energies. Storm very much being again how wind carries. It's not just the wind in and of itself. It is the messages. It is the current. It is a root point that also impacts greatly the environment within it and around it. It carries hydrogen, pollen, life within it, and feeds the earth in some way, shape, or form. This is how so many things procreate. So it is not just wind as in blowing or clearing. It is very much wind as in conjuration as well. Vital life force. And mirror very much being not just a mirror, but I think in wave spell it's white mirror, but it can also be very traditionally like obsidian. But ancient Nishika civilizations also understood mirrors as sort of portals, and not just I guess seers, tools, but a portal to or from, which is interesting given what the moon will be doing with other stars as well. Not necessarily the portal star, but a portal nonetheless. The portal makers. Interesting. Aquarius. You're like a black hole baby. Let's see, what else? Oh, so beyond Mishka astrology would be flower and redbird in Tadagi or Cherokee astrology, which I have a little bit of text for, not from me, but from this book I keep rocking, Cherokee Astrology, Animal Medicine and the Stars by Raven Hale. Rest in peace, with an ephemeris through 2015, which is an initial point, an initial jumping off point in how I calculated all of this. Let's see. Flower and redbird. Both of these things are very much like new beginning and also ancient understanding, because the flowers aren't just what we see, but also the root systems. The flowers are also something that I think has a profound understanding of death despite its beauty, and so we have these kind of polar polar understandings, polar connotations around these things that also somehow meet beautifully in the middle in this magical, sublime way. And so it is not the beauty of Aquarius, and the beauty in understanding how much more energy and chemical influence and elemental influence there is in astrology when you expand the 12 signs into their ancient understandings, is continuously profound. And Aquarius is never this or that, but very much the hydrogen bonding in between, which is very much why the symbols of it may be holding, may have potency, may have capacity, but it is very much so the charge in between these things, and not just the having, not just the holding or the understanding. For as smart as they are, it's beyond intellect, beyond just knowing, beyond just hoarding information. So let's see. Totsukwa, Redbird. Direction west. Dream time underneath the tree. Portal to the other world. Honeycomb of peace and love and life eternal. Wow, I love that. And also par with, Uranus, honestly, even Saturn and Uranus, learning in dreams or moving within dreams, doorways within dreams, and Aquarius and Pluto very much being a lot of updates in science of dreaming, or of consciousness, for sure, but understandings of connections, which is why so many technological advancements have moved within Aquarius and will continue to move with Aquarius. Purple amethyst, earth, apple blossom, wild strawberry. Interesting. How juicy, how lustful. But not just lustful, because the understanding of the fire here, I think, was going to be pertinent, but that will come with the flower. Pieces of the puzzle, my friend. Redbird is the Earth reflection of Alcyon, the youngest and brightest star of the Pleiades star cluster in the constellation Taurus. Sometime in the 1800s, an astronomer discovered that Alcyon is the central sun of the universe, the rightful heart of heaven, but academia refused to believe it, of course. I bet they called it a pseudoscience. Lightning is visible evidence of the presence of redbird spirits in the sky. According to Cherokee legend, the people came to Earth originally from the Pleiades, and it is possible to return to Nantakonye, the Sunland. Other peoples of the world share these same legends. Redbird is the daughter of the sun spirit and is therefore the sign of fire. Interesting, especially with Venus in its farthest point. This wantonness, this longing that's been in the air, is Aquarius understanding more of that in themselves, perhaps, for what has been widely known to be in Western astrology as this aloof, distant character. We shall see, we shall see. Estranged from their own hearts. Redbird is the daughter of the sun spirit and is therefore the sign of fire. Sun's alter ego on Earth, like red-hot lava that erupts and spews forth over the land. This sign bubbles over with volatile emotions. Sounds like an Aries. Kidding. This is a feminine sign, the hand that rocks the cradle. There's a loving rapper with youngsters. They sit at her feet and listen to stories of all the wonders of this world and the next. She reflects the gentleness and wide-eyed innocence of the mind of a child. The daughter of the sun is a symbol of nurturing the Princess Royale who takes over the care of the old, frail, downtrodden, forgotten, the lame, the sick, and the halt, and finds for them a place in the sun. Which is interesting, too, because Aquarius nature can be such an oddball, but so accepting of anybody within that nature. Anybody that describes themselves as odd or weird as well in the same times. The masculine side of this sign is the poet, the gentle romantic who jousts with windmills in pursuit of truth and beauty, the lad who loves not wisely, but too well. Interesting. Cherokees are friends of thunder. The two little red men of thunder, the Thunder Boys, are sons of Redman, the moon. I recall that being very similar to Danae stories of twin boys as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. They are the vocal half of thunder and lightning, companions of rain and cloud and hurricane. Lightning marks the path of the redbird's flight. It is the visible hotline between earth and sky. What some mistake as the firmament, I'm sure, when in fact it is a ionized membrane of portal quality. Blending solar and planetary atmospheric energy with the energy of the earth. Flashes of lightning compound vital elements with the essence of planets and animals to promote growth, thus ensuring the seasonal return of fertility. It triggers the union of sun and moon, of earth and heaven, for the perpetuation of life, without which the land would be barren and empty. And also, back to the mirror aspect, reflection of these lights. So it is not just the capacity of light and not just the surface with which it reflects, but the ability to absorb and reflect, the ability to direct in that sense. The person of this sign is full of zest, curiosity, and imagination, a dreamer of dreams, a crusader, a builder of castles in the air, a natural energizer who turns people on to ideas. Lightning adds spiritual force to the human body by the way of lightning in the blood that the medicine woman or man feels within her own body, her own pulse. Direct body to body vibration can be even stronger than words or mind to mind communication. So true. Meditating with somebody just back to back is always really profound. It is, I think, a very good way to solve disagreements in a beautiful, literal way. Like if you're going to turn away from agreement, then let's sit with our chichon together and see what the other feels, because you will feel where that other person comes from, and perhaps that creates fertile ground to solve said disagreement. That or smoke a joint. Or both. The key to extrasensory perception and access to the wisdom of the ancestors lies in the ability to bestir the blood to speak. Interesting, because the Greeks would also talk about churning the blood in various ways to sort of create like pharmaceutical concoction, really, or highs in it. Ultimately, it's what DMT is believed to be then and now in a lot of ways. Sheet lightning rebounding to the seven directions is the source of illumination to the path through the underworld to the other world and the opening of the way. The sacred stones used in rituals and divination, flint, obsidian, crystals, and others that have living power in them. Love that that's coming up because the innervations of both of these astrologies relate so closely. Whereas I think, traditional Western astrology is very much, condensing in such a way. It takes a lot of learning to understand the like hidden keys within it. Like your rising sign in Western astrology is likely your or your Venus in Western astrology is likely your rising sign in Vedic astrology. The sacred stones used in rituals and divination are made by lightning when it strikes the ground. Lightning gives to persons of this sign an intuition and super sensitivity to the universal consciousness. However, it is necessary to tune into nature's own electric power system and filter out the superficial static. Fire is a rite of purification and spiritual transformation. The flame is personified as ancient red, and the ashes are as ancient white. Persons of this sign are versatile, many-faceted, friendly, interesting, and consequently popular. I tend to agree. They often talk for a living, make good teachers, for they are easily understood. They can be artists, musicians, singers, particularly of a vintage style. Ooh, nostalgia. They respect tradition, are more inclined to imitate than to break new ground. They are drawn to philosophy and spirituality, and in earlier times to midwifery. The career associations are always interesting. Natural healing is the feminine forte. Chewed basswood bark was applied to a rattlesnake bite, for instance, because of an occult connection with thunder. This tree is believed to parry the thrust of lightning. Fire can burn furiously and consume everything it touches, especially if not moved appropriately. Or it can smolder in the ashes as an ember until it is again fanned into a flame. Like restless youth that never grows old, it just keeps on going and going and going. The Queen of Spades and the Jack of Spades are the cards that relate to this sign. Oh, interesting. Which is close to the earth. Spades are diggers who prepare the soil, uproot the weeds, and tend the beds to full fruition. Red bird is the fertility sign, the cauldron of creation, the germ of regeneration, the planter of seeds. Tuck them in with soft brown earth until they're snug and warm. Little bulbs must never feel, tender bulbs must never feel the winter's cold and storm. Now we'll leave the baby plants and let them go to sleep till the springtime bids them wake. When the springtime bids them wake, they'll frost and snow, they'll peep. The red bird throws the switch that turns on the lights all over the world. and engages the gears that grind out the sands of time. Sounds very karmic. Fire is a miracle worker to the benefit of mankind when it is controlled. When it runs riot, it causes mass destruction. Such is the fire of this sign. There is no need for balance. Emotions are inclined to flare up or to seethe internally. And there is a middle ground between neatness and sterility. You have a love for all humanity, all nations and races. It's the one-on-one encounters that you find hard to handle. You are pioneering new frontiers. You are experiencing transformation. You are probing the crucible of change. Separate trash from your treasure. Gather up your doubts, fears, and insecurities and cast them into the fire. Burn your bridges to all past failures and face front to the future. Don't play your tragedies over and over in your mind like a broken phonograph record. Use fire to forge the tools of your trade. Like lightning. Make like lightning, my friend. Following. Hello. Like and subscribe if that resonates. Following would be the converse of flower, which I love that I had said something about fire and flower coming up later, but it also came up in this, which is beautiful, and the understanding of that, like a deeper, integral understanding of fire. Despite being an air sign, you know, what does fire create? Steam, and you know, if you don't know how to mitigate those things, you know, like even cooking or cooking bacon or pancakes or whatever, or bacon pancakes, the ways like ovens will have those vacuum systems, or the ways in which ultimately you have to sort of create release valves or airflow, and also understand the heat capacity of the fire that causes that smoke. Like, it's not just air, it's so much more. It's not just air, it's like where it comes from and where it goes, all at the same time, which is a lot, and that's perhaps why Aquarians are often, you know, studious but easily overwhelmed, I think, because there is so much going on. And what a shame that Western astrology only gives you the 1 out of 3 perspective and takes from you the peripheral, really. So flower, an alternate side of these innervations would be, you can see south, midsummer, full bloom, energy of love and creativity, temporary beauty of flowers. Sunflower disc, or the eye of the sun, gold, ruby, fire, sunflower, red cedar. The sky sign here is the sun, the place of abode of the great spirits, whose cyclic movement represents the cyclic pattern of all life. Fire is sun on earth, or ancient white, or alter ego, much like the mirror. Sunshine is the energy that combines with the fertility of the moon to renew the earth. Their children include Redbird, Morning Star, and the 2 little red men of thunder. The sun not only creates and sustains all life, it is the super communicator, the way station that relays messages from other stars in the galaxy. The Redbird star, Alcyon of the Pleiades cluster, is a source of this extraterrestrial broadcasting. Sunspots are the key to deciphering the code. Interesting. I'm not gonna lie, that makes me very much consider why it is our government wants, not our government, why it is the American government wants Greenland so much. Because it has been like military telescope or lab bases before, and it is very much open land, or I think more access to waterways. I think more integral access to waterways. And Chicago, let alone like major business infrastructure of America, has been built on siphoning water energy and poorly distributing it. Damn, okay. Persons of the flower sign are channels for receiving these transmissions. They might like to cooperate with search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, and help in solving the cosmic communication question. Interesting. Flower is a natural channel for the rays of love. That's why they call Aquarians aliens, honestly. Flower is a natural channel for the rays of love radiating from the heart of heaven, an idealist and artistic dreamer. Um, I'm gonna amend and say heart of spirit because I generally try to filter through really Christianized ideas of heaven or hell, especially in the indigenous perspective. But that is a lens. An idealist, an artistic dreamer, devoted, romantic, demonstrative, or one who is aware of the beauty of the earth and the wonders thereof. The miracle of the transformation of sunlight to the yellow butterfly, flitting from blossom to blossom, gathering the pollen of positive thinking and distributing it to the four winds. The night sun, after setting in the west, arouses the black obsidian butterfly. The black obsidian butterfly, who is the night hawk predator striking terror into the hearts of humans and insinuating evil visions into the minds of the unwary. Wow, what an interesting take on a butterfly. People are always very shocked when I tell them that butterflies actually also eat decaying matter or corpses, and they're like, what? What? Blasphemy. No, nature. The sign needs to combine realism and idealism to enjoy the light and to cope with darkness, which opens the way to the best of two worlds, which is so interesting because I think generally we have generally Western astrology has an understanding of Aquarius as as either or two, but maybe more so into the realism and the idealism being sort of demoted as just creative oddballness. You know what I mean? So it's interesting that they bring these two together in such a way and to very clearly ask you to enjoy the light but cope with the darkness, and to utilize the path between both of these things. Persons of this sign speak the living language of light, which ignites the consciousness of others. Frequency, uterations, intonations, vowels, and consonants are much akin to the axioms of time and space in vibration. Persons of this sign speak the living language of the light. They could charm the birds right out of the trees with their soft talk, both in public and on a one-on-one basis. They are gentle as a dove, that minion of the sun who stands for peace at any price. I love that. Any fight for the cause of peace would have to be a sub rosa. Be careful not to disturb the placid waters. Yes, purpose of peace. Do not conflate, again, peace and war, which is a whole other writing that I've done, but find the intermittent path between realism and idealism. How beautiful. These flower persons are not to be confused with the so-called flower children of the 60s who were posy to advertise their pursuit of the impossible dream. Flower types, well, they're taking a shot at the white hippies of the 60s and 70s, which is honestly pretty dope. Flower types may share the same dreams, but they differ basically in that they are willing to oil the machinery with elbow grease. Interesting. This sign is, again, that actually is definitely another shot at the white hippies of the 60s and 70s. This sign is a knight errant seeking out the honor and the glory, a believer in fame as the name of the game, blatantly drawn to the glamorous lifestyle, riding the social merry-go-round and reaching for the brass ring, gathering disciples and listening for the thunder of applause. Ooh, interesting. Looking for the winning lottery ticket and seeing the glitter of diamonds. How wanton, perhaps a misdirection of the fire, a misunderstanding of the fire, which kind of takes us back to fully understanding, both sides of this coin, so as not to be distracted by glitter and gold and validation, which is maybe exactly why Aquarians can be so aloof, or distant, or what some would describe as cold. And why not? Gold is the color of courage and indicates an opportunity for wealth. Career opportunities for those of this sign include the arts, crafts, weaving, songwriting, jewelry and metalworking, entertainment, fundraising. They incline to be master craftsmen. I know some Aquarians who really like working with wood. Intellectuals will find satisfaction even in the exact sciences such as mathematics. Whatever the chosen direction, there is a need for a creative outlet, which can be fulfilled in a hobby, either making things or contemplating the phenomena of nature. Women lean toward the decorative arts such as fancy breads and cakes, embroidery, personal adornment. Men are in no way excluded from these arts. Cherokee men were quick to take up glass beadwork when it was introduced in the 18th century. Cool, cool, cool. Thank you for circling back around in a neutral way. This sign is a good team worker and may find satisfaction in coordinating the artistry of others. All tend to be clean-cut, hardworking, diligent, and eager to put their own hands to the wheel, working away with sunny esprit de corps. Flower is very concerned with personal relationship. Works better in double harness, experiencing joy in sharing. Interesting. Most of the loner signs are also real big lovers for sure. Maybe it's just a matter of how other people interact with it. Truly. This is a mixer, not a loner. Funny. One who is comfortable with people, who could sit at a typewriter in Grand Central Station and write a poem without feeling distracted. Companionship is the key. Emotions are more satisfying when discussed with friends. Trouble is a lighter load when divided in half. There is room for two in a buffalo robe, and it's much warmer when shared. The disc wheel of the sunflower, as the eye of the sun, is a mandala that portrays a star at the center of the universe, which is interesting because I'm pretty sure the star in tarot is also indicative of Aquarius, which has a lot to do with light, has a lot to do with reflection or, passing through thresholds, and I think capacity for that light and reflection as well. So a lot of these themes kind of converge in so many symbols, really. The multiple petals represent the many rays extending out from the great central sun. Much like Meshka medicine songs will be structured in the form of a flower, often having 4 to 8 stanzas or some sort of repetition in there, and this branching out and returning to, and branching out and returning to with call and response. So it forms the shape of a flower in frequency. Although it is generally agreed that the Cherokees recognize 7 directions, there are indeed an infinite number of directions around the horizon and up and down. I was just gonna say, I call to 9. I call to 9, but I think that there's more than that too. That's just generally the ones that I do. All around the sphere, meditation on this mandala soothes the troubled soul and tames the stress and tension of everyday living. It will help keep you calm and collected. Will let you ride the waves without capsizing your canoe. The face of the flower follows the sun from sunrise through high noon to sunset each day, gathering the fire of creativity, illuminating harmony and balance, resonating peace and continuity within the human spirit. This sign is the chalice of the infinite, the cauldron of creation, the herald of a planetary golden age. The age of Aquarius. Here rests the temporary beauty of the flower, both the times of sowing and reaping, and the dark time when the field is fallow. Flower is a golden-winged bird, singing its heart out to the golden sun. Flower types strive for perfection in an imperfect world. Ooh, tell me about it. Disillusionment inevitably follows in the wake of such unrealistic expectations, but they are inclined to hang on to their ideals long after the cause is lost. Although they display ardent affections for friends and soulmates, they tend to require equal enthusiasm in return, which sooner or later leads to a breakdown in communication. Oh my, do I relate to that? I feel like that probably is a shared concern with Scorpio energies as well, both being very oddball in the astrological signs. very deep lovers, but also often sort of on their own because understandings of love need to collaborate. There is a lack of understanding and respect for the ideology of others. Interesting. I would hope not. I feel like Aquarians tend to be big thinkers, but like full of thought and understanding, but also honestly sometimes very much like stuck in, well, I know better because of that. Big head when you're all air, really. There is a tendency, or when you think you're all air, there is a tendency to hang on long after the blossom has turned to dust. The balance of give and take can be missing, and they find themselves alone, living with their own daydreams. Come down out of the clouds and plant your feet on terra firma. Get real. Perfection is a goal we all reach for but cannot expect to attain. Perfection is not real. It is a puritanical myth. But also, in a very real way, like stay a dreamer. Keep your head in the clouds, but stay grounded as well. I love how expansive you can be when your head is in the atmosphere, but your feet are deeply rooted. And I think that's important. And again, if you understand yourself as only air, that is all clearing, that's all fainting, that's all vertigo, that's all, an expulsion of energy to too high of a degree, or a taking in of energy, like when somebody, or you like get like the wind knocked out of you because of a big gust or something, or like trying to breathe in front of a industrial sized fan, or those like fake skydiving tunnels, which is very much, I think, in a very real way, the ways in which people, humankind, tend to be very much mouth breathers and chest breathers rather than breathing through their nose, rather than being like taking in any kind of grounding breath. And obviously, the skepticism that occurs within people's minds behind that, because it is, too simple or seems too easy, or because it's not in a pharmaceutical bottle with a childproof cap. If I gave people a pharmaceutical bottle of grass, you think they'd finally touch it? It says on the prescription, do it 3 times a day. Oh my. What a trip. What a grand understanding. I feel like you and I have a more fleshed out idea of this ghosty, aloof Aquarius. So happy birthday. With that being said, we will pull some cards for Aquarius as my lovely gift to you, to see what awaits you gently this season. Maybe not so gently, but this season. And then we'll move through all remaining signs to see how they are affected as well. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your presence and your continued presence in a world of distraction. Let's see. Aquarius. Oh, I guess I should give my spiel, because I can't say who's new and who's not. But I do know we have a lot more followers now, which is pretty cool. Hi, hello. My name is Blair, like the witch. And I created my totem modification so as to modify the mind universe. It is an unfolding and an understanding of cognitive counsel, but also an indigenous wisdom and in modern science. And so wielding all of these tools and weaving them together creates a mitoid cyclical space to conjure. With that being said, I read in tarot, yes, but I also read in cartomancy, which means I read in numbers and playing cards. Any playing cards, really. I have a fun deck here, but I have a few. And I like to find new ones in places. Airbnbs will stuff one where a Bible used to be. And so sometimes it's fun to just pull cards and see what that deck has to say, what its personality is, what the room has to say. But so I read in tarot and cardomancy. We're only going to pull some playing cards today. However, if you would like to book a reading, a more private, personal, in-depth reading, then you can go to my website, My Tote Modification, and check out what's there for ya. There's tons of free things. There's tons of dollar things. There's tons of activations and what have you. The other thing that you might notice that is a little bit different is that I also consider it a great opportunity for a breath. I think your greatest diviner is your body, and with that, the numbers, the literal iterations of these cards can give some insight into the elements, into the body, and into the breath. So we'll be able to add that element and perhaps add that as a practice throughout this time to mitigate the circumstances. All right, all right, all right. Lovely. Lovely. All right. Much like we're hanging out, and there are cards in between us, because there are. You can't see it, but bam, there they are. Because there are. Much like there are cards in between us, much like we're hanging out, we're going to take 3 deep breaths together. You don't have to tap into anything or channel. However, if you do channel, it's always good practice. But at most, just make your body available to the fullest breath that you can find, and make your mind aware of any sensations that may arise. Cool? Lovely. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Interesting. There's a lot of gas in there. Are you feeling particularly airy, Aquarius? Or gassy, or distracted, charged, very vibratory. It also felt very contorted, which gives me the sense of anxiety, and very much more so on my right side, which is maybe like, expectation, responsibility, giving you anxiety, rejection of those things, which, be very cognizant of what is your responsibility and what is not, I think we all have a responsibility to peace in ourselves as well as outside of ourselves. But do we all have a responsibility to, Amazon? No, absolutely not. So consider that maybe with elements that have you overwhelmed or that feel like they're twisting your arm about the ways in which you really want to move. 9 of clubs, 10 of diamonds. Interesting. High calling energy, my friend, and very much air and earth. So high calling energy, bringing attention to a sense of overwhelm, a sense of distractedness, a sense of obfuscation, like you're in the fog, not above it. You're in the clouds, not above it. Which is very much obfuscation, which is very much blindness, which is very much maybe even a misuse of energy and light, because back to the idea of mirror and light and thunder, it comes from the clouds, lightning and all that, and rain comes from the clouds, but if we were in it, we would not be able to see it. We would be able to feel it. It would be very palpable. But if you are overwhelmed, your mind is not seeing clearly. Or if you are, distracted, overwhelmed, anxious, your mind's not seeing clearly. And so that's important to remember. How do you recall what clarity will feel like? You get back in the body and you find firm ground that responds to you. That sort of, you know, like if you're walking around in the dark, you find something that responds to you by telling you, hey, I'm pushing back here. Hey, this is, you know, something else real that's giving you substance. And don't get me wrong, a lot doesn't necessarily feel real right now. And that's, I get it. I totally do. However, let's get out of the anxiety. Let's get out of the overwhelm by returning to the body. And that's not stillness per se, but slowness. That's not, you know, it sounds so much easier said than done, but I promise you, like, pay attention to the ways in which that you breathe when you're anxious, and the things that that you're anxious about, and redirect your breath to be back, you know, in and out through your nose, because just breathing in and out through your nose is going to register as more palpable in the body. Even in, you know, taking a few breaths right now, I'm sure you can feel it, that it creates this clarity and this clearing in the body, but also sort of condenses, like firms the thighs, like feeds the belly. It is nurturing in a large way. And so with, you know, even the ways in which Venus and Pluto is moving, the ways in which we nurture ourselves or our dreams is going to be paramount for how that energy carries. If we ignore the fire, if we ignore the air, it will spin beyond our awareness or control. If we cultivate and tend to, and perhaps, you know, hold, you know, if we want to be aloof with everybody else, sure, fine, but now is maybe not the time to be aloof with the self, or to be outside of the self too often. The interesting thing about these numbers too is, like, yes, we can go high in thought, but we always come back and farther than just the point that we started at, almost like loops back around. Like, we go 9, we go 10. And so I think that's very much also, gosh, like even in just chanting, the ways in which that sound sort of like rounds around and carries, the way in which it has to be sort of belly full and really hollowed out before it carries, so that it can carry in a way that has that much more of a vibration and a tonal quality too. So though I'm sure you are longing or aspiring or what have you, come back to a very don't forget to come back to a stable point within you, to a grounded point within you, to a rounded and expanded part within you. You know, even in understanding building, you know, understanding trajectory. A wide base will make for a larger move upward. A large, wide stance, a firm stance, a structured stance will make for all the more capacity to reach higher up. So open up your airways, and allow it to regenerate you in a way that keeps you present, in a way that allows you to explore, but also maintains your presence. All right, Aquarius. Let's think about that while we clear the air. And breathe in and out through your nose. And breathe in and out through your nose. Beautiful. Aquarius. Thank you. Pisces. Pisces. There's a lot going on within you too. Watery dear. What say you? All right. 5 of clubs, 8 of spades. Interesting. Um, be very aware of the creative capacity of your mind, especially when it is rooted in its own self-loathing or its own distrust or distaste for yourself or your body. I feel like this is very much intrusive thought in a lot of ways, or the ways in which we are often our own worst, like, psychic enemy, creating, blocks and obfuscations in our own self-doubt, but also often, I think, being our own worst critic in a lot of ways, our own obfuscator in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of talk about not intrusion, like interference in the self or in the frequency or in the spiritual path in some way. And it, anytime somebody talks to me about interference in their life, it's always from this like helplessness, which is very much akin to cycles of trauma that are stuck in cycles of blame. And that's not to say that people can't interfere and traumatize, but we also permit it to a certain degree. We also, exhibit fertile grounds for it to a certain degree. And so I think this very much calls to the ways in which we have to reflect or understand, like, what is the environment of my heart habitable for? And is that conducive to the kind of growth that I want? If you're very quick to lash out at yourself or to shut yourself down or to, tell yourself that you can't, then that is creating a fertile atmosphere in you for a continuation of that. Like, oh, you think you can't? You're right. To be simply put, like, oh, you think that it only exists in this way? Well, let me align with you so as to create an echo chamber. Let me demonstrate to you what it is you expect from yourself, really. And so in that, I think it's also, I know easier said than done, but simple can also still be achieved in understanding the capacity that your mind has for both degrees. If your mind's very quick to being like, I can't, then consider for a moment, what if you could? What if instead? Because it's very much like, I feel like an emotional maintenancing, like if this is sort of like the takeoff area or like waiting room area, this sort of just above four, like room construction and ceiling over your head, then the 8 of spades is the frequency that it moves past, and it especially inverted is very much the ways in which our mind can put us at odds with ourselves. And so take inventory of this Five of Clubs kind of mental space. I think in a very real way, that's, you know, something as simple as meditation. And if you think that you can't because your mind does not feel safe to you, well, then you have to sit with those thoughts instead of continuing to run from them, because they chase when you ignore, but they settle when you face them. And in that, you'll be able to understand, rather than fear or rather than avoid, able to understand, like, okay, the falsities and the thinness to the logic of your self-considerations, and be able to sort of see where it is you've snagged yourself and burn off any threads that have frayed. It's very much like sad mental energy and like overwhelmed psychic energy, which is unfortunate, but I think also something that we can mitigate very easily with our own understandings of possibility. Let's not be led by thoughts that are not our own. Let's not be led by thoughts that are not integral to our understanding of self. Let's not be led by thoughts and understandings that are entirely baseless and not something we've experienced. I feel like it's a lot of like paranoia, kind of. In which case, like, begin to trust yourself. You know, like, there's for sure elements of the world that absolutely add to this. Obviously, with surveillance and writing and speech and government. So it's not like, you know, it's not like I'm dismissing that, but the more that you're able to trust yourself and trust in what it is that you carry, what it is that you move toward or through, then the less that kind of paranoia has any real grasp on you. And we're taking in a lot of information in general throughout the day, but make use of the information that you can move with, and ultimately, like, if it's information that's slowing you down, it's not information that we necessarily need right now. It doesn't have to weigh heavy. You can hold on to these thoughts without having to weigh heavy. But if your thoughts of yourself do not create more lightness in you, more buoyancy in you, then we have to investigate that weight and throw it to the sea, if anything. Throw it to the void. And honestly, in times of unsureness and paranoia, sometimes the best thing you can do is throw it to the void and see. Rather than doubt yourself into oblivion. We're very much working with a fire breath and an air breath, which is very much a conjuration of energy, as well as expulsion, as well as a clearing, as well as a projection. It's very much akin to invocation and evocation in that way. But if we're not clear about where that fire comes from, then that expression can be very erratic. And that's perhaps key in understanding any paranoia about information as well. Wow, Pisces, you really got a lot going on in that noggin. Is it all yours, though? Aries, how are you? Oh wait, we've got to clear the air. You just take a few breaths to sit with all of that information. Lovely. All right, Aries. Now it's just you. It's just you and me, Aries. Kidding. Ooh, interesting. Okay. 10 of Spades, 8 of Hearts. Interesting coloring too. I feel like there's a lot of things to look forward to as we move toward the astrological new year, which will be Aries season. There's going to be a lot of movement toward that. So I feel like continue the regeneration process, take in energy, because it will equate to a brightness. It will equate to an aloofness, not aloofness, into a calmness, into a brightness, into a like funness. 10 of Spades, 8 of Hearts, the habits, the return, the intensity building. Gosh, even with everything that's incoming up until like February, April, March. So much going on with the stars, so much going on with astral bodies in general, that I think allow it to continue to feed you, allow it to continue to nurture your energy without, asking much of yourself. I feel like this is very much about enjoyment, and enjoy feeling as good as you do even though it's not your birthday, kind of thing. Enjoy the great influx of energy, because I do think this generally leads to very positive as a whole, though I do think the 10 of Spades would be like 10 of Swords of intensity, and that can feel like a lot of ungrounded, like, stimulation, a lot of like antsiness, a lot of, and I mean very literally, I think that's in the ways in which people are very antsy for the spring. Big people are getting very like, not cabin fever, what's the word that I'm looking for, but want to bask in the warmth, want to grow, go out, want to go and see things and experience things, and yet we're, snowed in and Arctic freeze, and still have a little bit of time before the season is ripe for that. However, it's fine. Nothing has to catch up to you, and you have to catch up to nothing. Allow yourself to continue to be ripe with energy, and don't forget to utilize it by giving it back to yourself too. Rather than just, wantonness or longing or, an unbounded friskiness, which, I mean, can be fun too, if you so choose it. Breath-wise, I would think it's very much like a honestly, like a super intense clearing breath, like very, very akin to Wim Hof, very akin to like uh, like gaping and sort of hyper, and like really taking advantage of all the utilization of air, of skin, of organs, you know, so that you feel your breath in every facet. Um, Breathing in and out through your mouth, like that, kind of very akin. Um, and this Eight of Hearts, while would suggest water, I feel like the ways in which we can hold air and allow it to trickle into us, you know, it's kind of, you know, again, a very little component of Wim Hof breathing is you sort of like oversaturate and exasperate, and then you and hold, and you like let everything kind of like slow release into the body, and then there's a hold at the top after the fact as well. But that's much more intricate than we need to get right now. Essentially, I think even that clearing that occurs behind the eyes, that occurs in the bloodstream, that occurs in the mind, when you focus all of your energy on the task at hand in breathing like that, then you get sort of all components on board and all sort of moving in time, and that's very much a positive use of this kind of intensity and this kind of, you know, joyousness, or you know, spirited energy, in a positive way, rather than it becoming stagnant or becoming something that sort of like winds you up and shoots you off into oblivion. It's like making the most of your mania. All right. Let's soak that practice in. And make the most of the space that we can make behind our eyes. Taurus, what say you with your great influences coming out of retrograde soon enough? Okay. Four of Spades, Five of Hearts. And I think with Uranus coming out of retrograde, because Uranus is in Taurus, right? Coming out of retrograde soon enough. If it's not already, actually. Let's see. Oh, that's the wrong thing. Lovely. Will it work? Will it work? Not yet, but it will be soon. Yes. Four of Spades, Five of Hearts, is very much coming back to home, but also I think maybe embracing new paths or embracing new things, like the willingness to miss. And it's not necessarily like just nostalgia or like just what's been left behind, but do we cultivate something that we miss when we're away and look forward to when we return. Um, whether that be home, whether that be work, whether that be mental internal space, the ways in which I think that has been challenged in general as a collective, and with our own personal values against the general collective personal values that we've maybe felt at odds. I think this also alludes to some sort of synchronicity, and that's perhaps something to look forward to as Uranus comes out of retrograde, relieves Taurus of some nonsense, and we can return to the home, remind ourselves of why it is so cozy and comfy, return to the body, return to the mind space, and remind ourselves why we trust ourselves, why we like ourselves at all, and be able to move with that kind of energy forth, whether that be, inviting energy in or expression of energy and sharing of energy. But it's very much like a new guest at the table, a new guest that you're willing to have at your table, and perhaps even share a secret or two, because this Four of Spades is very much very close to home and very close to, I think, even like sacred spaces. Is this a sign that you'll be able to share that with somebody that works well with you or is interested in that with you? That though we felt at odds with the world as a collective as far as, moral or what have you, that we will get to see a sign of like minds that are kind enough to be invited in. Never mind behind enemy lines. Interesting. I like that a lot. These are also very contrasting colors. That I feel like, the key element of that is also that these colors, though opposites, illuminate each other more greatly and sort of draw more attention to the impact of the individual in a beautiful way. So there's a lot of reciprocity. There's a lot of regeneration. There's a lot of co-collaboration, communication in that. And so I would love to say that extends in all ways, whether that be in your own understanding of you, or household dynamic and harmonies, or your dynamic well outside of you and in the general world, and harmonies that we can find there. That's the interesting thing about readings like this too, is I call it a cycle of harmony. I call it a cycle of harmonies because that's very much what it is. And as we move through all of these energies in a cyclical manner, I think people mostly probably use these to look at sun, moon, and sun, moon, and rising. However, like I said earlier, Vedic astrology will give you like similar information, but like much more accurately so. I think Western astrology leads you to the mind or the ego. Vedic astrology leads you to the heart, and indigenous astrology will lead you to the soul. Understanding these things is paramount to alignment of those three components as well. And so, I give two fucks about sun, moon, or rising. I think within this, it's probably much more useful to watch your Venus and Mars. It's also very useful throughout these to consider what the antipode to whatever sign it is you think you are. So if you're Scorpio, watch Gemini. If you're whatever, watch the opposite. And consider how those things impact, because in a very real way, that is the dark side of your moon, and a more full integral understanding of you, especially the sides of you that you may be at odds with. And in general, even placements that your star chart in particular may, have a stellium and also nothing. Sure, you've got a stellium in this area, but the empty space that is opposed to it is equally significant, if not maybe even more so, depending. But I think too often we look at these things very literally, and we're like, okay, there's no planets in this sign, so it must not be important. I'm lacking in this thing. as if there's like a severed limb or something, when in reality it's like, no, you have all the connectors, you know, like you have all the hardware that you need to be able to utilize energy there. Just because it's not seen doesn't mean it can't be felt. And the oppositions of energy impact so much more than we give them credit for, or the antipodes, or the contrasts in them. So even if you're watching your rising and your 12th sign, find the polar opposite and consider. This is what I love about new moons, but I do it with any moon reading because it is the way in which light refracts. And so perhaps this is also a sign that you will get to see that in relationships and in expressions with others, or with other versions of yourself. And a very similar component, again, we have very air-ridden breath, and a water-ridden or heart-ridden and emotional-ridden breath, which is, both have to do with memory, but one is cellular memory, one is physical memory. And so we can clear the, mental, logistical memory and maybe retain and allow that energy to slough off even more in a series of holds, so as to build nitrous oxide energy, clarity, in ways that we can utilize more, with more honor, with more integrity, more so than efficiency. It's a lot of like pseudo DMT breathing, and I get the feeling that everybody's also kind of feeling antsy about like needing these wild experiences, but you can also create them for yourself, in the body, in the mind, in the heart. It also makes me consider the need for ego death, the need to understand ego death. And in general, Western society, I think, has instead created a dependency on fear of, instead of embracing the challenge, where people don't necessarily really understand or even want to understand. They just don't get it because marketing hasn't quite figured out a way to make you want to think for yourself, because marketing figured out every way to make you not want to think for yourself. And all of this allusion to, very clearing wind breaths, but very heart-ridden energies in breath as well, I think is very illusory toward that. If you find yourself feeling like you need this experience to change, or you need this experience to heal, or what have you, you have that power in you. All of those experiences are merely facilitations of that understanding. And so rather than, pop plant medicines like pills, hoping that it's going to change you, there are ways of creating and of utilizing and conjuring with the same chemical information, but from a more responsible place. It's you learning how to build it for you rather than somebody else building it for you and handing it over to you. And so in a very real way, I think it's going to be an interesting time for people as far as their willingness to have an actual ego death, or do they just enjoy touring and the tourism of liminal space. Oh my, okay. Gemini. right, Gemini. Interesting. Very interesting. A lot of earth energy, a lot of calling to grounding, considering Mercury has been taught in between the relationship of Mars and Venus lately and moving forward, really, then I think has allowed us, maybe to go on the outskirts of ourselves, whether that be a good or a bad thing, or a comfortable or uncomfortable thing. Understanding the outskirts of ourselves, maybe to a fault where, yeah, again, Mercury is taught between Venus and Mars, sharing information, but what does Mercury have to say for itself, and are they listening? It's like the mediator, but the opposite sides or the polarities is much clearer, and so are the bonds, or is the tie between Mercury like thinner, or can we refortify it? I think that's very much like, how do we fortify the lines of communication that Mercury has to any innervation into any sign, but again, utmost between our Venus and our Mars, because that is very much the ways in which your heart leads and your mind follows, the ways in which, even very literally, the nervous system shares information. And too often do I think we understand it in the opposite way, as if Gemini is about the mind telling the body what to do, and failing to recognize that information comes from a deeper neurological sense outside of the brain. And in the same ways that, yes, you can divine with the body, it's not that the superficial quality of the body, it's the inner soul quality of the body, the neurological lining of the gut, of the uteral lining, that allows for information to pass before the mind can cognitively fully grasp it. So don't cut yourself off at the knees, and don't let your head get too full of nothing. Five of Diamonds, Jack of Diamonds. Very grounding, very fortifying. I think it's thickalicious. And this Jack of Diamonds is very, very reoccurring when it comes to ancestral message or veneration, or intuition, and our spiritual counsel, and the ways in which, honestly, even beyond spiritual counsel or like ancestral veneration, the ways in which, even, different components of your brain have different input at any given time, and it is the working together of all of these components that actually results in the physical qualities that we express. It is a garden of creation, and so, and I think in a real way, understanding the body as a garden, just as well as the mind, understanding the body as a wise tool of knowledge, just as well as the mind, and not for sake of the body, not for sake of superficiality, just like it is not just superficial touch, but it is thousands and thousands, if not the most dense quantity of neurological cell receptors in the pulp of the fingertip, which sends information constantly. It is the electricity wrought throughout. And I think in a very calm and simple way, the grounding of offering that occurs both ways too. Like spiritual veneration often occurs in like a physical puja, or like a physical offering, or physical like fruit bowl offering or something, incense, what have you. But also the ways in which our own spiritual expressions is an offering to our physical body. and keeps that line of nourishment open as well. So two-way street, very much in this. It is not just growth one way, it's growth uh, on all planes and to equal and greater heights and, deeper root depths. And that's not to distinguish any differentiation of significance in those plants in the garden, but that is to allow the garden to flourish, and to allow the garden to receive. When that garden is flourished, it receives life in all forms, bugs and birds and bees and what have you. And that in and of itself becomes a regenerative quality. So even the things that we do in private or think in private or that we open up ourselves to in private can allow for this kind of loving growth, should we be as open to trusting ourselves. Should we be as open to trusting ourselves? Because if we are not open to trusting ourselves, then all of that feels like weeds, then all of that feels like intrusive thoughts and da-da-da-da-da. It's kind of the difference between like being super adept intuitive or psychosis. And it's a interesting polarity because I think utmost the connecting piece is your trust with yourself. The more you trust yourself, the more you trust the universe. And the more you're able to have both of those things. However, I think when it comes to, atheism or agnosticism, people don't trust the universe because they don't know if they, necessarily have anything to attribute that trust to. And so they lean very deeply into trusting themselves, but also to a logical fault, often leading to cynicism and doubt, to an illogical level of disbelief, quite honestly. Conversely, I think religiosity and religious dogma asks you to trust the universe and to not trust yourself, in which case your connection to trusting the universe is severed because you're not supposed to have it by doctrine, because that would give you power. And so, in order to create fertile grounds for power, do we trust ourselves? And where we do not trust ourselves, we engage with the self, we trust the self, we build that relationship, and all the more reason to trust the universe in momentum. But I think it's a funny thing that works both ways, but only gives you results one way. Much like a square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle can't be a square. Yeah, that's where I'll leave that. But very heavy on the earth breath, in which case, rather than evoking, getting very grounded in the body, allowing your breath to be a source of nourishment, allowing yourself to feel very palpable in your body, and I think in a very real way. That's even, lengths of breath work where I'm, going through my body, thinking, what would it be like to breathe through my eyes, and like, what would it be like to breathe through the pores in my eyelids, and breathe, imagining each little pore, and what would it be like to breathe through, more than just my lungs, but into my armpits, and bringing all of that breath into the body visually, figuratively, visually, literally, but in so many sensory perspectives, so as to remind yourself that you're real. Breathing in and out through the nose, so as to make most use of the air, to make make most use of filtration, of adjustment and acclimation, even because as times change, I think Gemini can often flip and flop, like they've got to pick one side of the fence or another, when in reality you can ground within the self and be a stable line in between, stable justice in between, a stable balance in between, rather than have to pick sides or play a part for one or another. All right, my loves. We clear the air, we breathe through our nose, yes? Beauty, beauty. Oops. Cancer. Cancer, you watery lover. Okay. Ooh, interesting. Because Jupiter is in Cancer, right? Three of Spades, reversed, which is very much akin to the Three of Swords, which can be, very much attributed to deep and saturated feelings, often painful feelings, often heartbreaking feelings, often grieving feelings, and the ways in which that can turn you on your head. But when you take it as an opportunity for a lesson rather than a fear of feeling, rather than a control and a strangulation of feeling, because ultimately that just makes it worse. It's like too much pressure. That's how, what is it, the hot pots, the crock pots, the pressure cookers, when those things explode, or an autoclave when that explodes. We're like trying too hard to sterilize the self, or to force the self to, cook fastly, cook quickly, that we cause a rupture or a split at the seams. However, though it can feel like rock bottom, those are also stabilizing points, because when we're in free fall, cool, we hit rock bottom. Now we have solid ground. Now we know where we are, where we can go, and which way is up. And that is integrity. That is the bright side of this Three of Spades, and the ways in which it can be, sort of all-feeling, all-knowing, and uprightness in movement forward. It is the uphill swing after the downfall. It is the retribution, the redemption arc, very much in that. And the Six of Spades following this, oof, heavy stuff. Inverted as well, which is very much this inner sense of self. How have we broken our own hearts? And how do we address that? What is your aftercare for when you've broken your own heart? Or do you abandon yourself? Oftentimes when we, are great lovers and need support, or, that's the ways in which we understand and express love, the first way we punish ourselves is through isolation and through a sort of self-sabotage even with both of these inversions. Whereas the Six of Spades begs you to recognize the capacity you have to hold and to build in the self. You are not just a void or a black hole. You are, ripe grounds for capacity. You are endless capacity for creation. Should you let your imagination do more than betray you? Should you understand what it means to betray yourself and finally change those patterns so as to uplift yourself? Oftentimes the affections that we want from other people are the affections we deprive ourselves of. And so, first step here, how do we aftercare ourselves from heartbreak? How do we nurture ourselves from a hurt place, so as to remind ourselves of our positive quality? Even in like the literal context of like a breakup or what have you, do you wallow in like, oh, was it me? Am I not good enough? Blah, blah, blah. It's all my fault that this person, couldn't commit or whatever it was, or left you on red, blah, blah, blah. That's a value issue. Stop asking whether or not you were worth enough for this person to consider. Oftentimes, if not always, people that fail to meet us with love fail to meet themselves with love, especially when it's freely offered, and in such a deep knowing sense. I would say ideally deep knowing rather than deep longing, because deep longing is a deep searching for self. Deep knowing is, I have so much love to give. Are you ready to share it with me? And that tends to scare people, because most people are like, I don't even know how to love myself, or if I do, how could I possibly let somebody else love me? What could they possibly see? And this is in and of itself where the problem starts. We're seeking things from other people that we cannot give to ourselves, or that we refuse to give to ourselves. It's not that we can't, it's not that we're incapable, it's that we ignore the responsibility to. And so, other people will ignore that responsibility just as well, and they see the frequency that it's not needed, that it's not necessary, because it's not something that's already provided. This is what people also mean by the concept of like, beyond what do you bring to the table is like, can you bring a table? Or are you just bringing pockets full of your own fucking trash and garbage and, self-loathing and dumping it out on my table? Because that's not cool. That's not cool. You gotta clean out your pockets. You gotta build your own table so you could be like, this is what I am, and it's not that I have to offer, it's that it's a welcoming space, and people will come. Then there's room at the table. Either way. Damn, that's so rough, my friend. But deep loves, for sure. Both very mind-ridden energy. So, again, I would say, clearing the body of dense thoughts, sit with yourself in meditation, and as these thoughts of less than, or, why me, or what have you, any thoughts that feel more like an uppercut to you than a hug, don't ignore them, don't avoid them, but sit with yourself in meditation, let those thoughts do their fucking thing, and give them to the wind. Like excellent, breathing through your nose, we take in all the thoughts, tangible earth, and we exhale through the mouth and hand it to the wind, so that you move through not just the mind's grasp on it, but the emotional grasp on it and the emotional understanding on it, because this is also all stuck in your head, and just being stuck in your head means that you have to turn to the body's knowledge in a lot of ways. We can rationalize, we can, it's kind of like looking for closure too. We can try to rationalize, but ultimately we'll never get the answers that we want, and that answer doesn't bring closure anymore either, or any more than you think it will either. It often just sparks more self-loathing or curiosity. So find other means of closure that allows you to move forward. rather than in seeking, logical validation for why. This is often big in breakups too. Is like, you owe me an explanation. Tell me da 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 da. And honestly, the same. Sometimes I'm like, did I do something wrong? Like going through in my mind, like, okay, da 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 da. Was it because I said this? Whatever it was. And in reality, like, no, some people are just not ready to meet somebody authentically. So you have to be willing to meet yourself authentically, nurse and aftercare yourself authentically, so that you can display for yourself the kind of relationship that you want to attract, or the kind of energies that you want to attract, or the kind of relationship behaviors that you expect from yourself and toward yourself. I definitely try to get out of the language of like, you deserve or I deserve, because it just reeks of entitlement and linear expectations. But I think in a big way, understanding that you have value and that your love has value is very important, and is very important regardless of and outside of this, transactional relationship understanding or expectation of self understanding or linear quality to deserving or degradation, really. Gosh, yeah, aftercare yourself, my love. Have a little, it's perfect prime time weather for a good indoor pizza night and like a cry your eyes out movie, so that you can remind yourself what a well of love and emotion that you are, outside of whether or not somebody else understands or deserves it or recognizes it or cares about it. But also, you be that person. Do you care about it? Never mind other people. Show up for yourself. Leo, let's hang out. Yeah? Oh no, that's not. Leo, 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 how are you? Let your hair down. I feel like Leo's got a lot of excitement incoming along with Aries as the seasons grow and change, and as we move toward a real new year, toward an astrological new year and renewal. But also, I think in general, the year has a lot to say about Leo's understanding of self and power or loudness and value, similar to our last reading. All right, Leo, where you at, love? Oh my. Okay. All right. I like this. 6 of Diamonds, 3 of Hearts. In which case, Earth air quality. Earth quality and a heart-driven quality. Perhaps antidotal to our last reading, in which we build confidence and conviction, but not get distracted by literal quality or by consolidation just in a tangible means, like building upon. It doesn't have to be, you know, enormous for it to be magnificent. It doesn't have to be like very much in the ways like small oil paintings can be so beautiful, or there's like artists who work in like miniatures and it blows people away. It does not have to be, loud or obtuse or provocative for it to be powerful or beautiful or heartfelt. And that goes for so many things, but take that, move it with ya. Six of Diamonds is very much, I think, irrigation of the system. For as exhilarating as Leo's energy can be, for as much as they love intensity, irrigation is steady, and it is balanced, and it is, like even distribution, rather than like me, glorious me, glamorous me. So I get the sense that, normally, not normally, but like where Leo would take, Leo's going to give and give and give, in some way, shape, or form, rather than rather than brute force take. Leo sort of has this regenerative heart about it, which is interesting. What a different take on lion energy. But I feel like that's maybe also the ways in which some of us have been working on our inner fires and our convictions more so than just bland or transparent, superficial confidence. And so Leo will perhaps, I think, get to see in real time and like in real reflection, what that can feel like and what that possibility is, rather than it just be, people only want you for your glamour or for your intensity or for all your bright lights and smoke and mirrors. This is much more like a raw, natural beauty kind of sun-kissed exasperation, or like exhilaration, not exhilaration. There's a hopefulness in it that I think is also really beautiful. And if you feel like that is lacking, please know that it is here. But perhaps exactly that, like your perspective is like switched, is inverted. Rather than where you feel hopeless, there is hope abounding. It's just a matter of perspective. It's just a matter of what you're focused on or what you're looking for. And I promise you that for sure. Everything's fucking crazy, and I get the hopeless feeling, but if you tune yourself to the frequency of peace, to the responsibility of peace, to your responsibility to aftercare yourself after these trying times, then you can tune yourself to seeing peace and seeing more people with that kind of mentality or interest and like mind in you, where I think there's less expectations. Where I think there's less expectations on us as people, for, and like obviously even abolitionists or people moving expect responsibility, but I mean like the vapid expectations of like tangible superficial world, where people like expect you to always be looking like a 12 and coming to work face full beat and whatever. I think this is a time where Leo will find radiance in their raw beauty, and will be able to turn that into an unshakable confidence. Especially if you felt hopeless recently or in the past. Again, similar quality, earth, air, and moving through emotions. So getting grounded as far as with the breath, and in any sense, obviously. But getting grounded with the breath, keeping the spirit in the body, feeling very present, feeling very real, not being too outside of yourself or too distracted, um, which is breathing in and out of your nose, feeling the breath in the body, but also being able to move through any knots, blockages, stagnations, and any intrusive thoughts or intrusive emotions or emotions that are not incongruent with the kind of convictions that you're trying to build. You know, like you're trying to build a new bad bitch version of you, then insecurity is a thought that's going to have to be moved with that water breath. So we get very grounded in and out through the nose, feel the breath in the body, but sit with yourself and allow. And anytime there's these thoughts that are like, I'm bad bitch, intrusive thought, I'm insecure, then we create distance from ourselves with that thought and sort of send it to the breathy river in that context so that the ether can carry it where it needs to go because it does not serve us anymore. Go Leo. And even in the sound, much like rain, may it wash away that which does not fit anymore. Virgo. Hello. Let's see, what say you? For a frosty night, I thought the fire here would be sweet and warm. It's still real cold though. Virgo, Virgo, Virgo. Cool, cool, cool. Cool, cool, cool. 10 of Hearts, 5 of Diamonds. 10 of Hearts inverted too. Stress. A lot of stress. A lot of high emotion, but like keeping it under the surface. A lot of maybe masking even. Conversely, it doesn't have to be that. It can also be, you know, just a lot of emotions, a lot of ideas, and the ways in which sometimes we can't get away so as to deal with them, and to not avoid them. But 10 of Hearts, inverted. And I think even perhaps a way in which we see the opposite side of us, or we see a side of us perhaps previously unknown or unlike ourselves, and we're not sure what to make of that, or how to make of that, or if to even make of that. You know, it's a strange time right now. The air is very electric, but bitter and strange, and there's a lot of excess energy that allow yourself to be surprised by yourself, but also don't hold on to being disappointed in yourself, because you don't have to. You don't have to be disappointed. You can see a flaw and you can fix it. You can see a flaw and you can work with it. You know, you can see a thought for what it is and investigate it or what have you, but you do not have to stay in disappointment. Sure, it's a real feeling, party on, but it's not one that has a lot of life or growth to it. So staying with it too long drains life force, essentially. 5 of Diamonds is the regeneration of life force, in which case we take even our worst intrusive thoughts and we bring them to a central balance point. We bring them to ourselves and at that central balance point, so as to weigh its weight and whether or not it floats or sinks. God, it makes me think of the ways they would test witches too, which, like, in a very real way, like, okay, you're sitting with you, your emotions been kind of weird, whatever, thoughts and dreams been kind of weird. Rather than letting it sit in you and ponder whether or not it is you or whether or not it makes you a good or bad person, recognize that you are the best gauge of that weight, and you go into yourself and you hold it, and you hold it to stillness, and you hold it to your heart, and you allow that to weigh these things, much like, justice scales. Even that central point is a key component in this. I think too often, again, with justice, it's like, what's on the scales, right or wrong? What's on the scales, good or bad? And in reality, they are at an equilibrium, and that the central point is your calibration point. So there's 5 of diamonds as a regeneration factor in that. Cool, we have negative thoughts, we're pissed at ourselves because we, left this message on red and missed a deadline or whatever. That's fine, that's fair. Honor yourself in holding space for all emotions, but do not become them, and do not dwell in stagnant energy expecting life force. And so you turn to the breath, and you invite these things to the surface, and you weigh them with your integrity in this 5 of diamonds space. Put it in the soil, see if it grows. The negative thoughts aren't gonna grow, so do they serve us? Well, no, not in this garden of our mind, not in the garden of our bodies or our altars or our temples. And so, is it life force energy, or is it stagnant? Is it draining? In which case you're able to maybe not judge yourself, but not judge yourself for its usefulness, but be able to see the growth capacity of these emotions or not. It is not whether or not you are useful, and it is not whether or not any of these thoughts are useful. We can make use of them by sitting with them in general, and then being able to identify whether or not it serves who you want to be, or whether or not it nourishes your mind, your spirit, your body, your land. Because even ash, maybe it's bad, but it nourishes. Even charcoal or coal, it's bad, but it nourishes. So let's grow beyond the guilt or the shame, or the expectations that we have that don't allow us to sit with those things. Let's grow beyond our ideas of value or worth based on usefulness, because you are valuable, and you are a worthwhile spirit and a valuable cosmo in and of yourself, regardless of those things. So let them not weigh you down. Take them to the fire. Take them to your inner fire, and allow the light to show you whether or not it will nourish or disintegrate. Truly. Kind of like when you have to fire clay pots. It's a moment of truth. Was there ripe conditions for one or another, or something that we missed? It's a moment of truth. We throw it to the fire. Some of them break, and that's fine. We can make something new out of them. You can always melt it back down and do something else. And some of them make it and become this beautiful other thing. Either way, there's usefulness, but we have to hold space for that moment of truth. In that, even these breaths is very much, again, creating distance between you and those thoughts, rather than become them, which, breathe in through the mouth and drag that exhale out through your mouth. Breathe in through your nose and drag the exhale out of your mouth as long as possible, so as to visualize and create difference or distance between you and your current perception, or you and your current thoughts perception. And once you've created enough distance and, feel safe observing, then you can investigate and also hold space in your body. And utmost, I think, in any meditation, you always ground your energy before you return back to the world. In which case, create distance or absorb, but always ground in the body, so as to, acknowledge truth, acknowledge and integrate truth, lest we always be caught in the wind of truth and untruth, unsure, because we're, stuck weighing the possibilities. Or taking on truths that are not ours, obfuscated from the reality. Virgo. Yeah, you don't have to take on every thought that you have adds you. I think is also a very keen point here. Libra. Okay. Libra. Eight of Clubs, King of Diamonds. What high calling cards for your interesting energy, my friend? What is in Libra? What is in Libra right now? Before my phone dies. Make. Yeah. Astral body that, if I recall, has a lot to do with like collective earth, indigeneity, like old world almost. It kind of makes me think of like if there was this secret other humanity kind of planet existing or homage to in some way. Which these both being high calling, I think all of that is to say what a great responsibility to the world that we serve. And perhaps that's a lot of pressure, perhaps that's a lot of weight, but I'm also here to call to clear the air, and say that the ways in which Libra moves most saturatedly, most passionately, most efficiently are the things that they love, and those are the things that are also intermittent, like interconnected with their responsibility to peace, to the world, to their arts, to love, ultimately our responsibility to nature, to the ways in which the universe optimizes for, love and beauty, for the ways the universe is, the universe optimizes toward growth. So, though we look out into the world and we feel a responsibility to it, and that weighs very heavy, please know the thing that you enjoy the most, the ways in which you find, freedom, flow, openness of spirit, or also the ways in which you serve the world. It does not have to be two separate things. Your own, much like your responsibility to peace within you, also serves the world naturally. That's just kind of a byproduct of serving peace within you, is that you just will also serve peace around you by proxy, by frequency. And so I think that's something to consider rather than feel excess weight, rather than feel excess pressure on do more, do more, do more. And I 100% also get that, because even in doing whatever we can, there's often this thought of, but I need to be doing something else, but I need to be doing something more, but I'm not doing enough. And that has a great weight to it. That has a great heaviness to it, really. But this Eight of Clubs and this King of Diamonds, I think, is very much the universe, and also, ancestral energies, and also spiritual energies that are like, let us help you take this weight too, so that you can move more freely and enthusiastically with the peace that is your responsibility to you and also to the world, or with your art and your beauty and your love that is your responsibility to yourself but also to the world, that is your responsibility to yourself that serves the world. It is a clear mind, it is clear sight, it is clear listening, and it is listening to the subtleties in the air, listening to the messages in the air, much like I said earlier with Aquarius and web and wind and ether. It's the messages that the wind carries. It is Arctic freeze, it is hurricane, but not just for sake of wind, because of the heat and the cause behind it. And so trust your cause, trust your heat. If you don't know where your heat is, you can find it. You can find it, and I think these elements are fire and earth, and so I think if you don't know where it is, put your booty on the earth and ask the ancestors, and they will show you that it is a light inside of you, and that it is radiant. And something that I often come back to in meditation is like visualizing that light and that candle within, in so many ways, sometimes in very intense ways. If you've dabbled in any of my activations at all, then in source code breathing, there is a reoccurring component of utilizing inner fire in breath, or inner fire in meditation, or inner reflection even in meditation as you move through it. So if that interests you, or is that something that you're trying to find, then that is a resource that you can surely benefit from. And in that opens you to many messages from the ether, from the great mystery, from the web, from the ancestors, from spirit, from universe, from source. And those are continually helping to guide us through sensation and feeling, more so than proof and sight. In which case, especially if you're feeling tired, I think utmost this wants a fire breath, and then to remind you to ground it so that you're not all top heavy, aggro energy, which is something that is an initial component for breathwork that I use in live group readings often, where fire breath is in through your mouth, out through your nose, and you can very much feel the openness and the growth of heat and of energy, but don't let it just sit there, or we become too much a sway in the wind, and always bring it back into the nose and out through the nose, in through the nose, out through the nose, so as to, yes, raise that heat, raise that energy, but also to ground it in the body, to integrate it in the body, rather than endless horizons sweeping. Consider the breath. Scorpio. Scorpio, my sweet baby Scorpio. How are you? What's new? Let's find out. Okay. All right. I do feel a lot of excitement, a lot of energy. I'm pretty sure there's still a lot of energy within Scorpio and Black Moon and Lilith, so that could be it. Oh, my phone's gonna die, so we're not gonna check. Four of Spades, King of Spades. So we have a lot of mental energy. We have a lot of mental fire. However, our King of Spades is a high caller of this, and often wields thought very well. Is very much a changer of perspective, even. And so, with the Four of Spades, often being home and, that regenerative conduit of safety, I think this is maybe a little bit more about discomfort than safety. Getting out of your comfort zone, embracing discomfort, embracing discomfort for the lesson in perhaps that pain more so than resistance or fear of, which is interesting because Scorpio's a dark one. Everybody thinks it's fine and it's fair and there's probably nothing new for you, but I feel like it is very much a new turning page, and I feel like this is also a pivotal time to trust yourself, which, though the waters may feel very disturbed, trust your footing, trust your depth perception, and trust that it is also around you. Like there's proof around you. There's proof of what you've done, how far you've come, or how much you're capable of around you, even if cognitively it doesn't seem so. Even if your logical brain is but always with a but, or always sort of backhanding compliment or amending. That Four of Spades is a reminder that a reminder that home is safe, that the mind is safe, that the body is safe, that the integrity is always going to be, not always, but is going to be reliable in this context should you choose it. I can't say always because maybe you don't choose it. But true all around. You can't stay home and agoraphobic, or stay within a box or stay within boundaries and call that safety when it is in fact comfort. But getting out of your comfort zone, reminding yourself what safety has been, will allow you to explore and allow you to expand in a way that does not betray the self or does not sow doubt. It's very interesting because it's like you have to get out of the box, but also remember the comfortable parts of that setting when you need it most. I have to leave home and travel, but when my anxiety goes high, at the airport or in a new situation, or because my hotel booking didn't go through, rather than feel completely cast out of myself and of safety, remind myself of the sensory input that safety realm attributes. In which case, it's not home as in a box, it's not home as in a setting, It is home as in a feeling. It is, you know, the smell of home, the way you remember light coming in through the window, you know, the stuffy that you always bring with you on trips that, you know, always well sits on your bed or whatever. But reminders of, tokens of, sensory input of, rather than just the thing, rather than like, oh no, I can't leave my house, I'm agoraphobic, da 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 da. Like no, the little things that allow you to expand far beyond yourself, truly. And I think as such a watery and sensitive and sensual sign, um, it is a mental and a heart creation more so than it is a person, place, or thing. And I think you get that. In which case, again, a lot of this is an air breath. I think that's very much, you know, again, clearing the space in the mind so that it's not wrought with debris or clutter, but not so much as to create distance from the self. Always grounding back within the body, but allowing yourself to maybe go farther than you thought before. It's almost like no safety net too, which if you feel like there's no safety net and you're trying something really new, dope, wonderful, love that, the safety net will always be your spirit, your breath, and your body and their connection. Remember that and you will never feel too far outside of yourself. It is one of my life's greatest lessons. Sagittarius. Sagittarii. Oh wait. We can't just let Scorpio go without clearing the air. I will say, I think this breath is a lot more about understanding its quality as a vehicle, a reliable vehicle, more so than it is about using the breath to get to any place. Maybe even understanding that like all trips are possible through this, rather than necessarily having an A or B, you know, start or destination point. All the more enjoyable when you are present in your body and when your mind and your body are not less separate or separated. Love. Sagittarius. Interesting. Six of Spades inverted, Eight of Clubs inverted. For as much as Sagittarius is the go-getter and the director and the archer and the arrow, again, it is not just that. And I think that this is an integral time for that understanding too, where it has less to do with our direction on the horizon or, you know, some go-to point, and has everything to do with an internal point like of stillness, of destination, of centrality. Like it's not even like one point. It's like, you know how how a compass will always point ahead, rather, or like point to north, whatever. There's a common point that occurs. Though we may move in space, the compass will always return to that point, essentially. And again, it has less to do with full speed ahead and more to do with how reliable the technology is, how reliable the compass itself is, which is how reliable that magnet inside of it is, that magnetic quality of it is, or how still the water as we sit the needle in, rather than, go, 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 rush, 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 shoot arrow, shoot arrow, shoot arrow. Perhaps this is, the maintenancing of the clock, the maintenancing of the compass, the maintenancing of the mechanisms so as to always have a reliable point of source. Which, much like the last reading too, it's like less about the point A or point B or the from here to the destination and more about the reliability of the vehicle and the journey, the reliability and plausibility of, capacity to even be able to travel those points. It's the having of the vehicle. 8 of clubs, also inverted. Mind fire inside. For all that we aim to prove on the outside, when the mind is on fire inside, we have faulty hardware. We have a faulty point of source, like your most honest or most true or most coherent thoughts aren't when you're in places of great unease or unrest, like our clearest thoughts aren't when we're in mania or depression. Our clearest thoughts are that stable point in between. And so how do we get back to that stable point that is outside of, just wicked mind energy throwing back and forth, to and fro, east and west, or forcing an opinion forward to a fault, which honestly usually comes from, I think, not understanding what the root is of that. People and their piousness about opinions often fail to recognize the origin, the etymology, the teleology of, in which case it's not just east or west whipping winds, it is very much southern root and northern fall. Northern regeneration, northern direction. Where do particles fall? Where do they come from? Where do they fall? It makes me think of garlic plants too, which is funny because are these thoughts yours? Are this overwhelm, this mental fire, is that yours? Is it signs of a mental or an energy vampire in your space or in your mind, and that's, not to point fingers and blame, oftentimes the spirit of intrusive thoughts or negative thoughts of self or, self-negging isn't in and of itself its own inner parasite. So, you are your own worst spiritual vampire when you are hurting and licking your wounds rather than treating them. In which case, we bandage the wounds. We find out where it is, southern direction. We stop the bleeding, southern direction. And we bandage it up and feed it oxygen for fresh skin cells, northern direction. And so in that, the wind's able to move circularly rather than just back and forth, rather than whipping between polarity and, this or that, or A and B points. Interesting, because isn't that true of like calculating sides on a, or angles on a triangle too. If you know point A and point B, then the information that is clearest to you would be like the opposing angle. Like the measure of degree of opposing angle, which is maybe more so about perspective and sightline and, like the bandwidth of information present, which perhaps gives you a clear idea of like, okay, what bandwidth are you operating with? And can you really fault yourself for, forgetting this thing, or, not knowing this information yet, or, can you really fault yourself for the resources when you're operating with a limited bandwidth, for some reason or another, whether that be overworking yourself or looking too far into the future, or, holding yourself too heavy to expectations that are just not quite sustainable or well fleshed out yet. There's no reason to stay in the stagnancy of, disappointment with yourself, or shame or guilt or fear of fucking up. That is an opportunity to investigate and find a wider perspective so as which to see all the more clearly. Open your eyes, step to the side, and listen to what's inside. More so than just your logical mind, but the ways in which the body reacts to it. Because again, it's not just, mental capacity, the ways in which the body is a diviner as well. So we're moving through air breaths and fire breath, which is very much clearing and then reestablishing a sense of self. It's clearing the mind, clearing the space, clearing the table, clearing the altar, and reestablishing a sense of self, reigniting the pilot light, which, gosh, with this wind temper, if the fire goes out, we don't scream and cry and like, there must have never been a fire, I have no fire, I have no fire, the fire went out. It didn't, I promise. But for sake of metaphor, with the pilot light, what do? You go fucking light the thing again, and you reestablish a sense of self, you reestablish a stable point of security, of, whatever sensory reality you have in you, so that you can have that calibrated central point on these scales of weighed thoughts. And rather than staying, heavy on one side or the other and right or wrong or fearful of, again, calibrating to that central point, finding that stable balance. Doesn't Sagittarius like rule the thighs or something too? In which case it's firm ground, it's stable, not even confidence, conviction. And that may be suffering now, but it is ripe for viewing should you be willing to look inside rather than out on the horizon line. In which case, in and out through your mouth, very clearing. But also, in through your mouth, out through your nose, central point of fire. Maybe aligning to the self more vividly, more real. And always, always, always grounding back into the body. So it's utilized with most efficiency. Sagittarius, I just did. Capricorn. Last, yeah, Capricorn. Well, time flies when you're having fun. Woo! So the cards, apparently. Capricorn. fierce. Interesting. Interesting. Because both of these have come up before, but not together. And so Capricorn is still very much a stable and very unstable point, because it's Four of Spades, Eight of Spades, inverted. So as Pluto moves out of Capricorn and into Aquarius, there's very much a sense of loss, a sense of grieving old paradigms. There's very much a lot of nostalgia collectively. But also I feel like the ways in which so many people are leaving behind things or moving on to new things, that's very much, new chapters, abandoned buildings, open properties, open rooms, empty rooms, open acoustics, or generally the ways in which people are like, expatting and like leaving behind everything they knew to try something new, or forced to leave everything behind in some way, shape, or form. And the Eight of Spades very much being the worry and doubt that comes with that, the what ifs, and that tend to, cyclically or that tend to spiral sort of downward or out of control in what if and all that's not possible and all the things that can go wrong. Capricorn is a bit of a control freak. And so I feel like this is a little bit of an exercise in understanding that about Capricornian selves and Capricornian influences and the ways in which we hold too tightly to systems that are altogether failing, and for what? For sake of belief, for sake of belief in something that's never proven itself to be. Like, no wonder there's so much worry when we're holding on to something that's never served well. It's like having a broken down car that you're always worried about breaking down again or breaking down en route. However, rather than stay in that stagnant energy, because it's not something that you can necessarily control or change, you can, much like, especially because these are inverted, like swords in the ground, right? And circuit's broken, it's perhaps on a loop, so it's like fuses blew, very abandoned building for sure in this, very abandoned building in like ectoplasm, but rather than dwell in stagnant energy or to feed or taunt or what have you stagnant energy, like the ways in which people like to talk shit to ghosts rather than help them pass in any way, you can, much like King Arthur's that one story where the kid pulls the sword from the rock, you can pull the sword from and allow yourself to make conduit energy to make make the ground ripe and part of an electrical circuit wherever it is you may choose. In which case, Capricorn has to have faith that they are capable of building and rebuilding and stabilizing anywhere that they are, because they themselves are a regenerative and stabilizing force, not a force that is only able or enabled to stabilize because of something faulty. Like, the system has never stabilized us, so it's silly for us to want or expect that it would now. Instead, we can conjure up new ideas of new forms of stability, new forms of regeneration in any way, shape, or form. This is, again, the reason the government's going after other places for, prime minerals and resources, and it is because the, American government, Western imperialism is so masculine to a fault that it expands unstably. And so its economy was never something that was actually able to be dependable, which is why they're sort of floundering and desperate for any attempts at anybody else's resources right now. Let's not be that, and understand Capricorn as a sustainable and regenerative source within itself, in which case, you know, the ways in which you can pull resource from your community and give resource to your community and to land and what have you. Like there's various other ways of getting the sustenance we need without mining and murder. Um, I know that's hard to believe in the Western world, but this is very much that opportunity, and I think a lot of people will go kicking and screaming because of it, uh, which is why this energy is so inverted, so heavy, and so psychic as well, and so mental. But lean into it. Lean into it a little bit. Lean into them thighs. Lean into them Capricornian little goat feet, or what do they see goats? Lean in, and I think there is brilliance and eminence outside of the system that will begin to be light at the end of the tunnel. And in that, I think, you know, again, an air breath, again, a clearing breath. I think, again, there's an allusion to sort of like a DMT-ridden, like, death-like experience breath. And that is in breathing, not in holding your breath. Yes, there are holds, but they become easier and elongate the space in between, you know, inhalation and exhalation, when the mind is also a participant in and of it. So I think this is understanding also the chemical processes of life and of regenerative energy, even, you know, spinal column energy, DMT energy in the mind and the brain. But it is not seeking it to a fault. It is not grasping at it. It is creating it. And so if you find yourself being at a detriment and you're like, I need something to shake this up, I think it's become very clear that plant medicines and ceremonies have been so commodified that people anticipate them to work overnight and like pull them out of their detriments and pull them out of their rock bottoms and what have you. And it's really not for that. It really is to make you more aware of rock bottom, so you can orient, and figure out how it is that you want to move and what you want to sustain. It is not to lift you out of it on its own. And so we clear the concepts in through the mouth and out through the mouth. In through the mouth and out through the mouth. In through the mouth and out through the mouth. And hold. Inhale. Exhale. Make space in that mind for something altogether new. Lest we miss the past more than we are excited for the future. Wow, Capricorn. Thank you for that entirely. Do we pull a little spirit bridge and see what the space has for us? Aquarius season, space end time. What did I say? Three of Swords. Three of Swords. In so many ways, this has come up again and again and again. And the Five of Swords. So it is very much boundaries, limitations, especially within the mental, the ways in which we constrict and compartmentalize and try to control, and it ultimately just makes it worse. And the Three of Swords being the very colorful ways in which we understand the things that break us, but let us not forget the ways in which it builds us too, the ways in which it can build us too. Too much of the world has this, the colonized world has this understanding of like, I'm broken, I need to be fixed. I'm broken, so ayahuasca will fix me. I'm broken, so mushrooms will fix me. I'm broken, so K-hole will fix me. No, that colonizer concept is the problem. And just because you take plant medicine doesn't mean you understand it, doesn't mean you're listening to the indigenous knowledge of it, or you would understand that it's not about fixing you. It is about remembering who you were before you felt like broken was even a description. You are not broken. You are complete and whole underneath all of these divisive layers that you are forced to wear like a costume, like a uniform, really. And that uniform is this Five of Swords of limitation, of limiting your view, of limiting your perspective, of limiting your capacity to absorb light even. Are you wearing, cheap, shitty costume shades when you're trying to look at yourself, when you're trying to see any kind of bright sides or value in yourself, and then wondering why people treat you or keep you in the same darkness when you've been in darkness, like you placed yourself in darkness, so you met them in darkness and in blindness, and then you wonder why they're blind to you when there was never an instance of sight. So illuminate the self, get clear about the self, and people will become very clear about it as well, because you will become beyond liminal space. You will become beyond the binary. You will exit the vastness that you consider the void to be and step into creation. And step into illumination, something that will define the edges of you, of the blade in so many ways, and of you in so many ways. Oh me, oh my. That's very intense. Intense. That is quite intense. Not to be harsh, but this has a lot to do with like internal identity crisis. And so I think we'll see a lot of people struggle with who they're trying to be, struggle with what they thought they were and who they think they are. And ultimately, I think that's because in so many ways, the colonial system don't want you to know who you are. It wants you to know who they want you to be. And the sooner you strip yourself of colonial or patriarchal perspective, the clearer it becomes that you are so much more than they allow you to be. You are not broken. You are not sinner or sinful or full of original sin. There's some colonizer stuff that they brought over like anybody fucking wanted it, because we were all fine with the idea that we were love and land and nature, and that everything was in relationship and not just independent and taking and what have you. There's a great blindness to that, and I think we're also all being asked to see more life in ourselves and in the world around us. And I know it's hard, but colonialism and patriarchy and government as it was hopes and intends that you will be blinded by everything that's going on, and that you will stagnate because of it, and that you will be unable to see light or bright side or love or capacity. They count on it. They're betting on it. And it'll make their lives a lot easier if we just stay in that misery. But that misery was of their conjuration, not of ours. They understood themselves and understand themselves as hell seeking for heaven. And in reality, you know, not even just my thought, Buddhist thought, not even just indigenous thought, heaven and hell are in the mind, and the only seeking of heaven is in the heart, and the only hell that exists is when you forget that that was where it starts. Bam! Alright, I will leave it there, and I will time this out. With some rain sticks. For all of this to settle, to move in the mind and the memory of the bodies, the plasma and water, to carry it with it, the rain, the wind, and may they carry away your hopes and dismay, but also find connections for meaning and messages on the wind. How perfect. What a cycle of harmonies. Much like I said earlier, a lot of people will utilize this using, you know, what's my sun, what's my moon, what's my Mars. I think it is integral to understand your Venus and your Mars. Sun, moon, rising was the other one. It is integral to understand your Venus and your Mars, especially if you're still navigating from a Western astrology chart. With that being said, you can also understand yourself on a Western astrology chart, but take a look at my website and check out the Alseer's Codex. Once you purchase it, you do get a PDF image file of the Codex so that you can also transliterate whatever information you have on any of your Western chartings overlaid onto that and see where those energies innervate, so you can get a more expansive chemical composition of these astrological energies as they move and as they relate. I also think it's very helpful to watch the whole thing all the way through, because we do all have energies within this. So if you have and you do and you notice, a lot of these readings will also, you know, sort of collaborate with each other and sort of illuminate similar sides to the same perspective, or almost like finish each other's sentences because they are that related. In which case, let's not get too self-isolated in the perspective of what we think we are, and allow ourselves to get curious about what we're capable of knowing and what we're capable of doing with that information, especially right now. Your breath is a vehicle to so many places and versions in you and of you. And your vibration, your tonal iteration is a revolution in and of itself. So please honor these tools and use them like the magical tools that they are, and let it lead you to your own true north magnetic pull. Other than that, you can check out other innovations of other astrology signs. There will always be new moon, full moon readings, and you can find some free meditations that go in tandem either with work or other illuminations, awakenings, and activations, or perhaps just serve you as they are in the moment in finding your breath as a resource, and weaving it into the astrological, astronomical, spiritual, and scientific world. And so with that I say, Tilak Oda Erstana. Shili Shili Kwayach. I do this utmost for my ancestors and to honor my ancestors. But also, I thank you for being here. I appreciate you and your presence. And I will see you next time.